Welcome to our public safety update for Q1 of 2024. If you have not been to these before, what you can expect today is we're just going to give you a high-level overview of the state of public safety in South Bend in terms of the South Bend Police Department. So we're going to give you that high-level view. We're going to look at some of our strategies and some of our partnerships going on. We're also going to share some information about some upcoming programs here held by the police department. We have a lot of stuff going on. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the Chief and Mayor to kick things off, and then we'll go from there. We will save questions until the end. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, we won't be as elaborate as the state of the city. So
yeah, don't worry, it won't be a 40-minute speech today. It'll be brief. But if you did join the state of the city, you probably heard that numbers were down last year in 2023 compared to 2022. If you look at Part 1 crimes, which are the more serious crimes, they were down last year compared to 2022, but also down about 19% last year compared to 2019. So the height before the pandemic. The pandemic brought on a lot of issues across the country, across the world. So there was certainly an uptick of crime during the pandemic years. But even compared to pre-pandemic years, we were down last year compared to 2019. And the good news is continuing on Part 1 crimes through the first quarter of 2024. We're down from the year before, the first quarter of 2023. So that's good news. Then, of course, the highlight on shooting victims, we're down about a third last year. And again, this year we're seeing those good trends continue in the first quarter, doing better than last year. So, those are good news at the high level. Of course, they're still higher than anyone would like to see, and we got to continue to work to bring them down. But it's reassuring that different pieces can have an impact. Of course, we know there are national trends, so there's a wave that we're riding. But even with that, not every city can claim that they're below where they were before the pandemic, and so that's definitely sets us apart from a lot of our peers. Part of that answer is, a lot of departments are struggling with staffing, and unfortunately, we started out with issues with staffing in the last few years, but as of the middle of last year, we've been back up to what we consider, the right. Roughly at the right level. Now we're looking to see if we can do, can we add or figure out ways to do even more and have an impact. So that's the overarching, place where this update will get to in a moment. But I did want to mention one other thing that is coming our way here soon. The state has mandated that we update the use of force policy. And this is not something, I don't think the state legislature went into this with bad intentions. They're actually, this will raise the use of force policy across the state. Unfortunately, it will impact some of our use of force policy because instead of just setting a floor for the whole state to meet, they prescribe things very directly. So, this is another example of the state dictating, local policy, and we think that the way we worked with our community a couple years ago, came up with this use of force policy. We hoped that the state would let us maintain that. We're going to maintain as much of it as possible, and key elements will be able to be maintained. Maybe will have to be some may have to be shifted outside the use of force policy, but nevertheless, this is the state law, so there's not a lot of flexibility from our end, but that should be coming to the Board of Public Safety tomorrow, and then we'll work on getting it adopted and seeing how we can work with that in terms of we know where the community stands, where we'd like to see our policy, where our policy has been, and how to preserve that approach, even though the state has come and given this mandate. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief.
It is just to echo just a little bit off that. I said something to the Board of Safety last month. I'll say it again tomorrow when I do the presentation. It's state law now. It's a little bit disheartening. I understand the reason why they did it. Some agencies didn't even have a use of force policy, and some were very generic. We did. But I think the most disheartening part for us was we had our community action groups. We had a lot of input from our council, from our Board of Safety and from our general residents over, I think it was 11 or 12 different meetings just on the use of force policy. So a lot of that is going to be affected, not a lot of it, some of it is going to be affected. And I wish we would have had more input than what we did. And I'll leave that part right there. Thanks, Dan.
All right, good morning, everyone. As has become the norm, I have the first few slides, and the first four of which are announcements of important dates that we have coming up here at South Bend PD. The first of which, recruiting and hiring, our prospect days. This is our first one this Saturday that we've had in 2024. We had two of those in 2023, and a lot of people have asked me, are we going to continue having those? And we intend on having these because it keeps a pool of recruits or possible applicants ready to become recruits. So we don't have to wait until 5, 6, 7 people retire or we have some resignations to put on our prospect days. We'll continue to have our prospect days twice a year so we have a pool of applicants that we can send to the academy as the need arises. So this Saturday, I think there's still time, Ashley, if you want to apply, but I'm not positive. It might have locked up. So hopefully we'll see a good turnout there and we'll get our pool even stronger than it was before. And on the next slide, Citizens Police Academy is currently taking place. This is the first time since pre-COVID that we've had 2 Citizen Police Academies in 1 year. We've been just having a fall session following COVID due to interest and several people wanting to see us have more community outreach events such as this. We're having a spring and a fall session. Those students who are currently in the Citizens Police Academy now are scheduled to graduate on May 7th. We have roughly 30, I believe, that have attended all sessions so far. So very excited about that, and it's a great way for the community to learn what we do in law enforcement. You hear those questions, why do you see X number of cars on a traffic stop, or why do I not get an immediate follow-up from the detective bureau when a case is being investigated? They can come to these sessions and ask those questions and find out some answers. And the next slide is about our food drive that we have coming up on May 3rd. So this is to keep our food pantry stocked, and we'll have in our lobby on May 4th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you want to donate to the food pantry, you can come into the lobby on that Saturday, and from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. they can drop off donations. The most common ones that we see would be canned foods. Diapers are also a great one, and I think there's a list in the picture off to the side there. So if you follow our social media, you can look on there for any future updates for the food drive. And then the last slide on announcements would be our Police Athletic League. It is now open for enrollment. So go to southbendpal.org to register. This is a great way for the youth in our city to get involved in activities over the summer when school's out. It's not just coaching in sports. There's also mentoring that takes place, but sports is a big part of it. So swimming, tennis, the all sports camp, and track and field as well. And then we'll dive into our usual slides for recruitment and hiring. The total numbers of hires that we have this year so far is 1. That officer was a previous officer here at South Bend Police Department. He went out and worked another job for a couple years and decided that he wanted to return, so we did hire someone in January that is a returning officer. We've had 3 individuals either resign or retire, which puts our total number right now at 248 officers. We have 7 currently at the academy now, and they are set to graduate on May 3rd from the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. After that, they'll be sworn in. I believe it's May 15th is the Board of Public Safety meeting for May. So those individuals will all become sworn officers, and that'll boost our number up to 255 should they all successfully complete the last few weeks of the academy. And then moving into a breakdown of our department diversity, you can see here we've dropped off slightly with female from the 4th quarter of 2023. One of our resignations was a female officer in this quarter, but we have increased with African American slightly. And then our Hispanic, I've talked about this, it's been up and down over the last few quarters, and so that remains a priority for us to continue to build up our diversity with Hispanic officers. We're looking forward to sending to the academy in August 1 to 2 Hispanic officers. That the prospect days that's taking place, we're hoping from that we see more Hispanic more individuals that want to be officers show up to the prospect days. I think this is where you started, Chief.
That's me. So the gun violence snapshot that we have here, you all are familiar with the slide. It hasn't changed, but the good news it is changing. The positive still we continue. So we went from 182 incidents in Q1 of 23 to 158 in our first quarter this year. 17 victims to 12, and then I think very prominent numbers, 128 guns to 216 guns. Now these are all criminal involved firearms, criminal involved shootings. So it's accidental, self-inflicted, intentional, those are not counted into those numbers. And then you have the actual breakdown itself. I think this is one of the mayor's hit on it every single time. You hit it at the state of the city with the 48% decrease. That's phenomenal. We want it to be zero, but as long as we keep getting higher and higher, that's getting better and better. You see our fatals were cut in half. And then probably our group member involvement are one of the things that we're still contending with. It's not just us, it's SAVE, it's our other social partners, our core group. We're working on some other things. We just had a meeting last week to try to do some different things where we can maybe get some more in-depth interaction with our group members to keep them from being victims, witnesses, and certainly suspects.
When we look into the death investigations, we've investigated 3 murders this year. 2 of those have already been concluded or resolved. Those responsible have been arrested and already charged. We do have 1 open murder case right now. It's still very active. We have 1 death investigation. We were asked to assist the St. Joe County Police Department to investigate a death that occurred in Granger, Indiana. That case has also been concluded and the results have been turned over to St. Joseph County.
All right, I'm sitting in for Lieutenant Kayla. I don't know where she is.
Well, she's probably over in Texas.
Oh, well. So she wanted to obviously highlight these things, and they're worthy of highlighting. The Victory Over Violence update. It's been 2 years since implementation, 2 years and 2 months. 15 VOV cases that we've had this year, 24 firearms recovered, 34 additional outside of the pilot program. Quarter 1 stats, 84 cases, 62 arrests, and 20 grand in rewards authorized.
And maybe when Kayla gets back, maybe do a story. The community is coming on board so well that we do need to raise money to keep the rewards going. So maybe when she gets back, we can do a fundraising pitch to build on this success.
Yeah, it definitely needs that. They were, it was quite a significant amount that they were down from predictions or previous years, and I know it's a pretty good amount there. I don't have the exact number, but I know it was pretty steep. Shredding event, Saturday, April 27th, 8 to 12 at our fairgrounds. That tends to be the biggest one that we have, and that is action-packed. $20 minimum donation. Of course, they'll accept a heck of a lot more if you're willing to or able to. And any unwanted documents that we'll be able to shred. And they usually have like 15 trucks out there, and we fill them up and even have to get more. So keep your private stuff private, at least on paper fashion, and that's it.
A quick overview of our traffic enforcement. Back in quarter 2 of 2023, we reached staffing levels that we felt comfortable enacting traffic details again on our shift level. We heard from the community, we heard from council members who hear from their constituents. One of the top complaints we were hearing is that we need traffic enforcement due to dangerous driving that everyone sees out there. And we didn't have that for a couple of years because our staffing levels were that low. Answering calls were the priority, and we did not have the resources to assign officers to work on traffic enforcement. We do now, so each shift has at least 2 officers assigned to traffic enforcement, and this gives you a breakdown of what they've done. That increase was dramatic in quarter 2 and quarter 3, and then fell back a little bit in quarter 4. We obviously, due to cold weather conditions in quarter 4 and quarter 1, but we do expect to see those increase for quarter 2 of 2024.
So if you remember last year, we introduced a mental health calls for service. Code M is what we classify those in our CAD system. you'll see we had a total of 1,580 last year, 363 already in the first quarter this year. And I know that people may go, oh my, there's so many more. That's not bad news necessarily. Our officers are more able and capable of recognizing some mental episode or illnesses when they respond to these calls. If they're not sure, they contact one of our critical incident team members, a supervisor, and then a third mechanism at the bare minimum, as a detective bureau will go over some of those reports that are filed to make sure that those are mental type episode involved cases. So again, we have that number. Our officers are well-trained in these. And again, if they're not sure, there's at least 3 levels department-wide that we're able to triple check to make sure those are mental health-related calls.
And then a great way for business owners and also residents of the city to partner with the city in deterring crime and reducing gun violence throughout the city would be South Bend Sync. Homeowners and business owners can register their cameras. That would be the first step. But you can also integrate your camera system either at your house or at your business. To do that and become part of the real-time crime center, you just go to the link for Sync South Bend and you can integrate your cameras, and then the real-time crime center would have access to those if a call for service goes out in the area if a crime is committed, so that officers can look at those screens and hopefully resolve the issue or solve the crime if one was committed. You can see there we have 790 integrated cameras into our real-time crime system now. Strategies and programs, I start off with Flock on the next slide. So license plate readers, we utilize Flock. I know there's been some questions recently about those Flock cameras, so I'll go back and cover some things that I did from 2 years ago. We've had license plate readers for 2 years. It started off as a project that was multi-jurisdictional with the county police department and Mishawaka Police Department. So we first just got a few of those to try them out, and we put them on major thoroughfares entering our city, as did the county in their jurisdiction and Mishawaka Police Department. So working together with them, if a license plate is read by one of these cameras and a hit response comes back, one could be for an individual that's maybe involved in a shooting in Indianapolis. If they come into our city, we would know about that if they drove through a major thoroughfare. And then also with Amber Alerts, if there was an abduction in our city, maybe a child was taken and a vehicle was used to do that and we have a plate for it, if that vehicle left our city and went into the county's jurisdiction or Mishawaka on a major thoroughfare, Flock would pick that up, so officers would get a hit response for those. So due to the case assist that we saw and the success that we had with Flock, we added more cameras last year, about midway through the year. Again, those are all on major thoroughfares. We put some downtown and we put some in business districts, so we have several, as do the jurisdictions around the city of South Bend. And that next screen is a snapshot, so that shows you the successes that we've had already this year is 40. So that puts us on track to be above where we were last year. I think we were right around 100 successes. In 2022, some very notable cases. There were 2 homicides that, if it were not for Flock, we may not have had a successful case that led to an arrest. And Captain Biggs can probably talk a little bit more about those if he's willing, but without the Flock cameras, we likely wouldn't have gotten charges on those. They helped us to investigate them thoroughly and bring those individuals to justice. And then ShotSpotter Connect. This is a resource deployment tool, an unbiased one that is not open to human error. This is a computer algorithm that takes calls that are reported on throughout the city. It looks back at 5 years worth of data, and then for each patrol shift, there are several missions, 6 per side of town, where officers have to go and spend time. We have mandates for those officers so that they spend 15 minutes in each of those zones. And then once our ShotSpotter missions are complete, on that next slide you can see our completion percentage is very high at 99%.
So this concludes the beef of the presentation. We're going to go through now some events that are upcoming, and we will take questions after that. So a couple events we have coming up, as we do with every spring and summer. We've got a calendar full of events. Just looking at April, we have 3 we want to highlight here. We talked about this Saturday, the 20th, we have Prospect Day. Technically, applications closed yesterday, but if you're really wanting to get involved, just contact our training and recruitment division and we can get you through as long as your application is approved. Also, both on the 27th, we talked about the shredding bin at the fairgrounds, but also the DEA's Drug Take Back Day is that day as well. So you could do two birds, one stone, get some of your unwanted medications thrown out, and then some of your unwanted documents over at the fairgrounds. So that's a great day to reduce yourself of some clutter and then also make yourself safer through protecting yourself against identity theft and then getting medication into the wrong hands. In May, as mentioned, we have our South Bend Police Department food drive. The actual physical drive is going to be Saturday, May 4th, Star Wars Day, 10 to 1 in the front drive of the police department, but we do have big boxes in the lobby right now that we can collect donations up until then. We are continuing our monthly community crime stat meeting, second Wednesday of each month at 6:30. And then Friday, May 17th, we will have our annual Fallen Officer Memorial to memorialize and remember all those who have given their lives in service to our city and our department. There will be more details on that here in the coming weeks. So one last thing, we do our Schools Out cookout and our Back to School cookout. We will have more information on that in the coming weeks. We're looking at potentially June 8th for our Schools Out cookout, but we'll have more information on that. And that'll probably be in the next 2 weeks or so. And we will now open it up to questions if anyone has anything they'd like to ask about the presentation today.
Just briefly, two things though. The drug take back event, which you heard, our lobby's open. You can bring them. No creams, no lotions, no liquids. So we can take everything else, and we have for quite a long time. And then the PAL thing, Dan talked about the Police Athletic League. We had over 647, I think, or 674 just in our summer program last year. All of that last year was over 1,200 kids that participated. So when people say there's nothing for our kids to do, there's something for our kids to do. And get them in there. A lot better than tearing up our parks. That was a...
And it is free, if I didn't mention that, right, Chief?
Yes, absolutely.
Any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Just speaking of the numbers that you guys have for first quarter, I guess, what does it speak towards the progress in the future for having, a better year, continuing to have a better year than before? Kind of just the start of this year, how it's going so far.
It's good to see the progress continue. Of course, one quarter, we're going to be cautious here because, when we get through the summer months, we will feel better about if this year is really looking better than the previous year. But even last year, we had a really great year going, and then toward the end of the year, the numbers jumped. So it can happen. It used to be a little more predictable, I'd say, and now it's kind of there's these waves that are a little less predictable. So no one's declaring victory right now, but it is good to see these trends continue. Positive trends and getting the numbers down to where we want them as low as possible.
Yeah, anecdotally, most of these the majority of these are emotion related, anger. So we can't predict when that's going to happen. If we could, we probably would be able to prevent a lot of these. So someday, hopefully in my lifetime, we'll be able to see where we can intervene before that trigger is pulled. I will tell you that every month last year, we had a decrease in Part 1 crimes, and so far this year, that trend continues. So if you're looking at it analytically, it's great news. To us, it's still above zero.
Hi, good morning. Speaking of that, I think one of the biggest concerns that I hear from viewers, specifically parents, is about the violence among young people and they're susceptible to joining gangs here. Is there any specific preventative methods that you guys are doing right now to prevent that? Because when you have to report about a 12-year-old being shot, it's almost unbelievable coming out of your mouth, but parents and viewers are really concerned about that.
Yeah, we've done several things so far, and I know the mayor's going to hit on some things, and Dan probably will too, and Jason. But I will tell you that we have weekly meetings, not with just our bi-weekly with our Save People social services, but we also have them with JJC. they go into the schools and try to intervene based on requests from the school or what they're hearing or knowing from the streets, meaning our SAVE and others, to go in there and try to get that intervention to occur. 5-star programs, things of that nature that we can get kids into. Police athletic league that we can get kids into. They don't have to be cops. We just need to have an understanding conversation, good, bad, or indifferent, with kids, and at least in that period of time, bad things aren't going to happen.
Yeah, and actually, just the meeting before this one, we're meeting with our Live and Free grant awardees and our community team over in Venue Parks and Arts. And so they're doing a number of things. So, first and foremost, that's where our project manager for the group violence intervention is under, our chief community officer. And so that strategy is a nationally proven strategy where we connect folks to social services. We have conversations with folks who are driving the most violence. So just like any city, there's a small number of folks that are driving most of the violence. And so really focusing on having those conversations, trying to get them off the path. And then the group violence intervention strategy, there's that piece of it, the outreach, the social services, but then of course there's the law enforcement side of it, that if folks, if folks aren't heeding these calls to get to a better path, that's where the strategic focus unit really comes and focuses on those members. So that's that piece. Of course, since it's getting younger, our community team in Venue Parks and Arts is also going into the schools, which is called the Violent Prevention Team. So there's the GVI, which is targeting those who are driving violence, but then there's those who are casting a wider net to try to prevent them from getting involved in these groups in the first place. But these are the challenges. The groups are being run by older. They're sophisticated. Some of these groups are sophisticated, and they're recruiting younger and younger, and figuring out how to get kids to do some of their work for them. And that's a challenge. And so one of the best ways to do is make sure that we're coming down on those adults that are leading these groups and driving this trend to younger and younger.
And if you notice, the only good stories coming out of groups or gangs are somebody who's got out of a group or gang. There's no other stories that I know of, that I'm aware of, that have come out and say, hey, look at this great thing that happened with this gang or this group.
That's not how that typically goes. I understand it's a multi-layered problem, so I don't think anybody would be naive enough to think that it's just in one area, in this one part of the city. It's a collaborative effort is what it sounds like I'm hearing from you guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is, it's, when you say the numbers, when the numbers are going down, group violence still accounts for a large percentage of the shooting numbers, but if they're going down, that means that even the group numbers are going down as well. And so, the question was asked in my previous meeting, like, how much is it, police being fully staffed, how much is it, these efforts? And that's hard to say. I mean, these are complicated. We're trying to get better data to figure out, if we knew what was the most effective, obviously we would direct more resources. But right now, we have all these different approaches, and so far, we seem to be making progress with them.
Well, and I think the mayor's office, the chief's office, the police department as a whole, we're building relationships with the community. We're involved with all these groups. We're our SROs. We're trying to work with the schools to get involved and show them a different way. So it's not just enforcement here on the police department side. It's building those relationships and showing them a different path with the POW program, or bringing them in and for mentorship. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we?
Would you guys say that you're seeing higher closure rates on these crimes, and if so, how does that kind of contribute to keeping those numbers down?
Well, I know that both Mayor and Captain Biggs like to expound on those, so I'll defer to either side of me. The Mayor knows the numbers like the back better than I do. Well, you do that.
Well, a few years ago, we expanded our violent crimes unit to bring homicide investigations within SBPD. Since that time, we've been well above the national average in solve rate, in the 80s, basically. And we had a streak in the beginning of 100%. Obviously, we knew we couldn't keep, that's almost impossible to keep going forward, but we're doing really well in terms of solving homicides here in South Bend and other crimes. Other crimes are being solved at a good rate. Now, I mean, and that was during the peak. I mean, we were solving these homicides when, you know, we had more homicides to solve every year. So as these numbers come down, we have more, you know, the same resources are here that we can put toward each case. So that helps for sure. And as we said earlier, there's a small number of folks driving most of the violence. So if we're able to get them off the streets, that helps. Of course that helps.
Yeah, you're seeing some of the prison sentences. We've had a few murder suspects that have been sentenced over 100 years. That makes a difference in the community, and that's setting a tone from our judges of going, you're not going to do this here in this city, in this county. So, and then technology. Go back to Flock. You know, technology. We live in a technology state now in an era, and so we utilize Flock, ShotSpotter, and some of this other things that I don't want to go into a lot of detail with, that help us solve those crimes and help us their lead to point us in the right direction. So a lot of things. There's a lot of investment here at the department. We utilize those, and that's why the solve rate is maintaining where it is.
And dedicated police officers and detectives. We always seem to forget about the dedication. You know, they put their heart and soul in every one of these cases as if it were a family member, and then they take that home to their family. Please, let's not forget about them, how hard they work and what they have to take home with them and bring back the next day.
How does presenting these numbers and, you know, being transparent with the community and stuff, how is that also adding to building that trust and keeping, you know, that transparency and, you know, showing that work that you all are doing with the community?
Taxpayers are paying for our services. Like, they have a right to know exactly what we're doing. I know some other agencies aren't comfortable with giving that. Why wouldn't they be? I mean, these are facts. They can't be disputed. I know many have tried to dispute them or think that we're trying to curtail or soften things. It isn't. We've given you the bad news along with the good news. And again, analytically, it's phenomenal. Like, anywhere in the country would be like bragging about this. We don't. I mean, it is from the analytical perspective, but it's above zero. We shouldn't have any of these. We shouldn't even be having these updates.
I mean, public safety is a top issue of our residents. And so, you know, we talk about a lot of things, we highlight a lot of things, but this is a core government service, a core city service that residents care about. So if you go knock on a door of any one of our residents, a lot of them will say, this is one of the top, if not the top issue, one of their top issues. What are you doing about safety in our community? And so this is important to them, and so of course it's important to us as well, and we want to show and have that accountability. Here's where the numbers are. We're making progress or we're not. We've been on a good roll. We'll keep, you know, there'll be a quarter down the road where inevitably, you know, if you keep driving down, statistically at some point you may not have the same good news to share. But, you know, right now it's been good news for the last several quarters.
I think ShotSpotter Connect is the perfect example. We worked with City Council before we even asked for the monies to purchase it. And so as we go to neighborhood meetings and we hear from individuals in certain areas of the city that say they haven't seen a police car in 2 weeks, well, how can we fix that? Well, we can use technology, right? So Resource Router puts those officers in those places. And now when I go to those meetings and our CRO officers go to those meetings, they're not hearing that complaint. They're seeing the officers out there, and that goes a long way in the community. So that's certainly one of those technologies that we've taken full use of, and you saw the 99% completion. Taxpayers' money went towards that. So if you're not seeing officers in your community, let us know. We'll make the fix.
Speaking of technology, one of the things you mentioned was the real-time crime center. How can people get on board with that? How long does it take? I would assume it's simple because everything's on Wi-Fi, right?
Seek South Bend. So I probably should have talked a little bit more about that. Our real-time crime center, we've continued to enhance it. What does that look like for the community? We started off with just 2 analysts working in there, and that was for about the last 9 months after their training took place. We're now adding 2 more. So we'll be able to cover more, we'll have more coverage time throughout the week. Our officers have access to Fusus. That's a technology that we use. So an officer goes to a scene, they can pull up camera footage if that business is integrated into the real-time crime center. The officers can't out there. What the real-time crime center does is make that easier. So there's people analyzing that data and can push it out to the officers so they don't have to take time, step off to the side, get on the computer, what cameras maybe caught this crime that was committed. Our real-time crime center can do that for them, so we become more efficient that way. But yeah, for the community, integrating into the real-time crime center is the perfect way. Residents have done this as well with their Ring cameras. You can register those, so if a detective goes out to a scene where a shooting takes place, they can look at a patrol vehicle and see which cameras are registered. Now they know which doors to go to immediately and ask if we can see some footage.
And you just go online and sign up?
Yep, on Sync South Bend, and the process takes less than 5 minutes for a resident. If you have more cameras, of course it takes longer, so for a business owner, they have to go through each of their cameras, but not much longer.
I don't want to step again, but I have another question. My other question is, this state mandate update for the force policy, you don't seem extremely happy about it, but I do want to know, what are the things that you plan on fighting for to stay from the original policy that, you guys have to the changes that you will have to make?
Nothing to fight. It's already in law, so it's irrelevant. However, there are things that we can be more precise and specific on. We've already been working with city legal. Matter of fact, the presentation will go tomorrow to the Board of Safety for their awareness, and there'll be some tweaks. But I understand the philosophy behind it. You want everybody to be on the same page. This won't be the only one. It's going to be the emergency vehicle operations as well. Those will be the two, for starters, a statewide, the statewide mandate policy. So I am disappointed in the simple fact that our residents, our council members, our Board of Safety, and many, many others were involved in crafting what we have. And 36 years or 35 years at the time in police work, I'd never seen anything better. And this was coming from our own family. So again, disappointed, disheartened, absolutely from that perspective. Everybody worked so hard on that. And then, just a one-size-fits-all somewhere down south is not South Bend. And that was our premise to begin with. This is South Bend. What is it that our family wants to see in those policies? And that's where we had the input, and that's what we did, and we poured ourselves into it too, and it just feels like a lot of that was taken away. It just feels like that. Again, city legal's still with us going over some of those things, but
Trying to keep as much as from what
yes,
the community said they wanted, because it's not your plans, what the community said that
yes,
they wanted. So trying to keep as much of that intact under what you have to do.
absolutely.
So it's been a long process. Obviously, the state made their law and we had to follow it, but it's, there's been some pieces, how much can we keep, and that's what we're working on bringing to the Board of Public Safety. And from there, we'll have conversations with our legislators. It's, we can complain about it, but really, at the end of the day, if we don't get legislators on board with something else. So we'll see if there's still, if we're able to retain most of what the community came up with, maybe that's okay. But there may be a couple pieces where we go back down and say, hey, this is really important to us. It's probably important to a lot of other communities around the state. And is there any way that you can modify this law to allow us to do that?
Maybe an opportunity for positive influence on other people.
Absolutely.
Although we were on the Sync South Bend topic twice, I failed both times to mention something. So
You didn't tell
business
me when we started. You're good.
business security grants. So our first round of that has been completed. There were 30 businesses that were chosen and received money so that they could sync with the Real-Time Crime Center or get upgrades to their camera systems that currently existed. Some of them maybe didn't have camera systems at all, and so the grants that we gave out, those monies were to go towards that. The second round will be starting soon, so within a couple months we should be seeing something from the city for the second round of business security grants.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll see you next quarter.